Alrighty, good morning, or good morning. I keep saying good morning, but it's not morning, it's good evening. Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to see you all here. I am very glad that we are all able to be here today. And this evening, this is a very, very important topic, and I hope that everyone is doing well tonight. This is as I said, it's a very, very important topic, one that there's a lot in the way of misunderstandings, misconceptions, all that stuff. There's a lot going on. And so it's really, really important for us to, how shall I say it? There's a real importance for understanding and being able to recognize the issues here. Mental health is huge, and there's a lot of things going on with it right now. So we really do want to take a look at that. So that being said, let's open up with a word of prayer, and we shall get started. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your grace, for your mercy, for your love, for your kindness, and just for everything that you have done for us through Jesus Christ. I just ask that you would please be with us now. Fill us with your Spirit. Help us to understand you. Understand these things. Please lead us and guide us. And thank you so much. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray and ask all these things. Amen. Alrighty. Once again, I do want to say thank you guys for joining us. This is something that, is a very, very significant problem today. In fact, probably one of the biggest problems in the health community is mental health. I'm the King's Bard. You can find me on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitch as well. I do many presentations like this. If you want to know more about those things, if you want to know more about health in general, or about Bible study, or about history, or just listen to some music, I've got all that there. On my YouTube channel and some on my Facebook page as well. So please do check that stuff out. Got some fantastic stuff. If you have trouble finding me on YouTube, you can find me on Facebook, and I have a link to my YouTube channel there. Once again, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I am the King's Bard. Let's dive right on in to mental health. How important is our mental health? This is a question that a lot of people would be surprised at the variety of answers that you might get from this. Some people, of course, will say, well, yes, of course our mental health is important. I mean, it's a part of who we are. We need to make sure that we're taking care of our mental health. Some people, however, might say, oh, well, mental health, that's just something that, is made up. You don't really need to worry about it. It's all in your head. So you just need to think better, right? Or maybe just look at a different perspective or something like that. Well, who's right? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Mental health is one of the three facets of being a human being. Let me move this down here. Mental health is one of the three facets of being a human being. In other words, if you are a human being, then you have mental health. Mental health is a component of every single person on the planet. I don't care if they are autistic, nonverbal, anything like that. I don't care if they are the most put together person on the face of the earth. Mental health is still something that every single person has to deal with. I don't care if they're a vegetable lying in a hospital bed, right, in a coma. Mental health is still a part of who they are as a person. Right? Mental health is one of the three the mind is one of the three components of what it means to be a human being. The mind, the body, and the relationship, the relational aspect of us. Those are the three components of being a human being, and the mind, mental health, is one of those three facets or components. It is just as important as our physical health and our relational health. It's hugely important, so please don't ever get the idea that mental health is not important. It is important. And by the way, if you have questions at any point, then go ahead and please ask them in the chat. I will make sure to read them. I'll see them. I am interactive as much as I can, so if you have questions, make comments, anything like that, please leave it in the chat. I would love to see those questions, comments, etc. They're really important, and yeah, it's really important to ask questions. Now, when it comes to mental health, yes, it's true. It's all in your head, but that doesn't mean that it's fake, right? There has, especially in people of an older population, there tends to be the idea that mental health, because it's all in your head, just means that it's something that you can just kind of stop thinking certain things, or that you can just change the perspective or things like that. And we'll get into why that's not quite the case, but why it also is partly the case, right? It's not totally wrong, but it's also not totally right either, and I want to address that. But regardless of what, the methods and things like that, the idea that it's all in your head, therefore it's fake, is wrong. The mind is very much a complicated thing. The brain, the mind, though, they're very, very interconnected. Just like any computer hardware, right? The brain can malfunction. You can get short circuits, you can get miswirings, you can get all sorts of things going wrong on a computer. The same thing is true with the brain. The brain can malfunction just like your computer hardware. Your cell phone has problems, it's a little slow, or it's just not working properly. That's a hardware issue, right? Not all, I'm not talking about glitches now. I'm talking about your phone's running slow, you're having problems with your antenna, you're not getting, your phone calls not coming in, your signal isn't as strong as it used to be, things like that. Those are hardware issues, right? Those have to do with the physical wiring or the physical technology that's in the phone. And just like that, our brain can also malfunction. But just like software, our mind can also have glitches. It can also malfunction too. So when you're playing, if people who've played video games, things like that, if you've ever played a game and you've run into something where, well, the program isn't quite working exactly like it should, where you've got certain things that are going on that really shouldn't, that are defying physics or any other parts of the game, yeah, that's a glitch, right? Or if you're on a phone, right, and an app is doing something funny, or your screen is kind of jimming out a little bit, those things are glitches. Those are things that that are software issues, and just like that, our mind can also have those problems. Our brains can malfunction, and so can our minds. So it's really, really important to make sure that we recognize that mental health is not fake. It's not nothing. It's not something to be put down. It's very real, and it does need to be addressed. It's as much a part of a human being as is the physical aspect of health. So it's really, really important for us to address it. So that being said, we have to ask the question, what all makes up mental health anyway? What does mental health look like? What does that mean? What are the different aspects of mental health? What are the components, the parts that make up mental health? Well, there's really two sub-facets, or two categories that make up the mind. There's two things that make up the mind, really, ultimately. Just like with the body, you've got your habits, right? And your body and what you do with it, right? You've got your physical organs, your anatomy, and what it does, your physiology. And then after that, you've also got your habits, what you do with your body and those organ systems and everything else. Those two things together make up your physical health. Just like that, you've also got two things for your mind, for mental health. The first one is your cognition. These are your thoughts, your beliefs, and your worldviews. This is one major component of your mental health. And just like your habits, this is the major component upon which all the rest of your health is built. Your body, your thoughts, your beliefs, and your worldviews are what fuel everything that you do, and everything that you feel. All your emotions, all your actions, all your habits have their roots here in your cognition, or in your thoughts, in your beliefs, and in your worldviews. This is where all those things come into being. They all come out as a result of what you think, how you believe, how you view the world. Now, there are many people who may not understand this, who might disagree. And to them, I would say, well, I would refer you to Albert Ellis and to Beck and Ellis, the founders of cognitive behavioral therapy, and also I really, really strongly recommend you read some of their work. Fantastic stuff. That being said, I don't think they got everything fully right, but they did definitely get a lot right. And so it's really important for us to take a look at our thoughts, our beliefs, and our worldviews, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The other aspect of things, when it comes to our mental health, are our emotions. And of course, this is where most people will feel the want or the need. Just like most people don't really feel the want or the need to change their habits, but they will feel it for their body, right? They might feel sluggish, or they might, recognize they're overweight or something like that. They will feel the effects of their organ systems, their physical body, before they will necessarily take a look at their habits. It's very common. The same thing is true with our emotions. Our emotions are an outgrowth of how we think, how we believe, and how we view the world. However, most people don't recognize that, and so with our emotions, we tend to feel those things first. We tend to see what the impact of our emotions and sense that and feel like, okay, I have some problems here, when our emotions are out of whack, when in reality, those emotions that are out of whack actually stem from our thoughts, our beliefs, and our worldviews. So it's really, really important for us to recognize that. We do need to take a look at the root causes. This is something that is very, very common in holistic medicine. The idea that, and medicine in general, whether that, and not just, and natural remedies and everything else, the whole goal is to eliminate the cause of disease, not the symptoms, the cause. And all too often, people who who like to think about mental health and things like that will focus on the emotions, which are mere symptoms. The real cause are your cognitions, your thoughts, your beliefs, your worldview. That's the cause of your disease. Your emotions, maybe not so much. Now, we're not talking about mental disorders here. We're not talking about, we're not talking about, bipolar depression, manic depressive. We're not talking about OCD or autism spectrum disorder. We're not talking about ADD or ADHD, although I think ADD doesn't exist anymore. But we're not talking about those kinds of things. We're not talking about developmental disorders, mental disorders. We're not talking about psychopathy or sociopathy. We're not talking about those. We are talking about right now just overall mental health. All those individuals who suffer from those things, they may have some other things that they may need to do. That's not the scope of this. Now, I don't happen to class depression and anxiety under the same banner as those other disorders. Even though they are mental health issues, they are less linked to brain chemistry and per se, and more linked, less directly linked to brain chemistry and more directly linked to habits and lifestyle. They're lifestyle issues, not just genetic issues or hardwiring issues. Now, there may be exceptions to that, but those are individual cases, not on a general bell curve. On a bell curve speaking, statistics-wise, the vast majority of depression and anxiety cases are lifestyle related, not brain chemistry related, not hardwiring related, not genetically related. That's just, unfortunately, for people who think they're the exception, it's very rare that they actually are. That's just the way that bell curves work. We all tend to think we're the exception. It's not anything new to anybody else, right? And I don't mean to put anybody down here, right? But depression and anxiety, generally speaking, those are lifestyle issues, not having to, not mental disorders. They're mental illness, not mental disorders. Okay, so there's a difference between the two. And actually, something else I realized I did not put here that I really should have. Mental health has a huge stigma around it. There's a big stigma, right, with mental health. Huge stigma. If you say, "Oh, I'm struggling with a mental illness at the moment," people are going to think you're nuts. Why? Because we still have a 19th century concept of mental illness. We think that mental illness, that someone's saying, oh, you're mentally ill, oh, well, that means that I'm crazy. Well, no. It mean, I mean, would you say that someone who has the common cold is crazy? Is their body going absolutely haywire? No. Their body just has something invading that's, or something else like that. It's it's not we shouldn't shame people for having mental illnesses. We shouldn't treat people like they're crazy or they're nuts, just or and we shouldn't also think, oh man, I'm such a I must be going crazy because I have to, I've been diagnosed with a mental illness. I must be nuts. No, there should not be this stigma associated with mental health. And if we have mental health issues, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You wouldn't feel bad about about getting a common cold. Let's not feel bad about having depression or anxiety. But at the same time, let's recognize that it is a lifestyle disease largely, and so we do need to take care to acknowledge that. Back on track. Cognition and emotion, our thoughts, beliefs, worldviews, and our feelings. These two subfacets make up most of your mental health. Now, there are some things to add on to that. Physical health and relational health also have major roles in your mental health, and we will talk about that towards the end of the presentation here. But largely speaking, your mental health is made up of your thoughts, your beliefs, and how you view the world, and your feelings. Those are the two things that make up most of your mental health. But as I said, we're looking at things holistically. So your physical health and your relational health, your relationships, etc., those will also have a role to play in that. So, and again, we will speak about that towards the end of the presentation. And this is something very, very important. Mental health should never be looked at exclusively. And this is something that's true for pretty much any issue. We should never just look at, if someone is physically ill, if someone is physically upset, if has a physical illness, we need to look not just at the body, we need to also look at the mind and at the relationships. Now, sometimes, you just get a cold, right? That's, whatever. But how is that going to impact your relationships? How is that going to impact your mental health? What's going on? What are your situations like? How is this going to impact all sorts of things? We need to take a look at those things. So it's really, really important that it's really important that we take a look at those things. Now, again, I do want to say, if you have any questions or anything like that, please post them in the chat. If people are, I should be seeing them. So if it's not, then it's a problem that I'm not aware of, and I usually can see people's chats. So please do make sure that if you have questions or comments or anything like that, and I will open a period at the end, as I always do, for questions, comments, etc. But feel free to do it at any point. As I was saying, though, mental health should never be looked at exclusively. We want to make sure that we're looking at things from a broad point of view, from a holistic point of view, looking not only at the mind, but also at the body and at the relationship and the relational side of things. If our mental health is not good, we need to look at our physical health as well as our relational health and take a look at that. And again, we'll talk about those things later on. We should always consider mental health in the context of the whole person. And this is true of any kind of health, whether it's physical health, mental health, relational health, doesn't matter. It should be consistent. It should be looked at in the context of the whole person. That's really, really, really important for us to recognize. It's hugely important. Now, how can we have a healthy mind? How? How can we do it? Well, there's a lot that comes into play into this, and obviously we're going to be looking, we could look at all sorts of things, from physical health things to other things like that, and we will touch on that briefly. If you want to know about physical health and a physical lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle that really will impact your mental health, then go check out my YouTube channel. I have a whole series on the acronym RESTORED. It's a series on, or it's an acronym that focuses on healthy principles, so please do check that out. I do need to do some editing on that, I believe. I have one video that somehow got split into two, but regardless, that there is stuff there. So if you want to see that, check that out. Once again, I am the King's Bard. You can find me there on YouTube, and if you have trouble with that, you can find me on Facebook as well, and I have a link directly to my YouTube on my Facebook page. Now, how can you have a healthy mind looking from the perspective of just the mind itself? How can we have a healthy mind, just healthy mental habits? Well, let's take a look at our cognition first, our thoughts, beliefs, worldviews. First, we will assess our belief system and our worldview, and we'll talk more about these. We'll elaborate more on these as we go. First, we're going to assess our belief systems and our worldview. Okay, that's really important to do. After that, we assess our thought patterns. How are we thinking? What are we thinking? What are the kinds of thoughts we're thinking? How are we, how are we perceiving the world around us? And assess your self-talk after that. How are you talking to yourself? How is your what are you doing? What's the perspective that you have about yourself, about what you do, and how do you talk to yourself about who you are, what you do? Now again, this doesn't, there's people who, there's really two camps. You have people who actually hear an audible voice, and people who just kind of see thoughts, and like it's more of a pictorial thing like that. There's seems to be a pretty healthy split between the two. Regardless, how do you talk to yourself? How do you treat yourself in your mind? Do you treat yourself positively? Do you treat yourself negatively? Are you building yourself up, putting yourself down? How are you talking about and to yourself? It's really important. Those three things, looking at your belief systems and your worldview, your thought patterns, and your self-talk, huge. Those are the major components. And again, what you're doing is you're doing a deep, clean scrub here, right? You want to make sure that everything you're believing is right and healthy and good, and that your thought patterns are the same, and that the way that you talk to yourself is the same. It's really, really important. Because again, everything comes from your cognition. Your emotions, your habits, your everything. Everything comes from what you think. Everything. And so you want to make sure that what you're thinking is accurate. But you also want to take a look at your emotions. And this is something that a lot of people, honestly, that, again, cognitive behavioral therapy doesn't do very well. And it doesn't really focus on emotions. Rational emotive behavior therapy is a little better, but you still kind of have something in the distance that, that's left to be desired. We don't want to ignore our emotions any more than you would ignore your body and what it tells you to do. You want to make sure that you are assessing the way that you internally express emotion, as well as the ways that you externally express emotion. These are so big. We do need to, these are both huge. And again, we'll talk about more what that means in the future, in a little bit here. So, these are the habits that you should have mentally that will help you develop a healthy mind. Now, there's other things too to consider. Again, having to do with other habits, your physical health, and your relational health. We'll talk a bit about those too. So we want, but as far as just the mind goes, before we zoom out and take in a big picture, view of it, we're just looking at mental habits that you can do to improve your mental health. So let's take a little closer look at healthy cognition. First, belief systems and your worldview. Your belief systems and your worldview, first and foremost, need to be accurate to objective reality. Unfortunately, this is not the case for many people. Many people's worldviews are not accurate to objective reality. And this is unfortunate. There are people out there who how can I word this? What example can I use? There are people out there who, what's a good example? There are people out there who seem to think that the whole universe revolves around them. That everything that everyone else does is as a result of how they see, how those people are thinking about this person, right? Oh man, that person over there, that person is doing that because they don't like me, or that person is doing that over there because they like me, or oh, that person over there, they're doing something that I don't like, therefore they're wrong and they need to stop doing that. That is a very big example of something that is a worldview that is not accurate to objective reality. Most of the time, people who are around you are probably not thinking about you. Now, that's not always the case. You do have situations, right, where people are thinking about you, sitting across from them at the table, having a conversation with them, bumping into them on accident. They're going to briefly think about you, right? Of course, if you're up giving a presentation or something like that, or otherwise just, holding general attention, then yes, people are going to be thinking about you. But on the street, randomly, for the most part, people are not going to be thinking about you. They're not going to be looking at your hair necessarily unless it really stands out. They're not going to be looking at your frumpy clothes. They're not going to be thinking about those things necessarily. Most people don't even notice, especially in today's day and age. That doesn't mean that you should go out and, I don't have no care or thought whatsoever for what you look like. That's not my point. My point is that most people are not thinking about you a whole lot. Most people are not paying attention to you or to what you're doing. And and this is something that unfortunately, once again, there are too many people who have this idea that everything revolves around them, therefore everything should revolve around them, and decisions that other people make need to be regulated as a result. Not really. And again, there's also the idea of taking what people another big thing is telling people what they should believe or shouldn't believe. That's a big thing, and that's really big. Saying that, oh, you shouldn't believe that guy, he's whatever, or you should believe this guy, whatever, things like that for whatever reason, or getting a little bit more personal. Oh, you need to believe this way. You need to follow this. You need to go to this particular you need to have this particular religious view or non-religious view, or you need to have this particular cultural perspective, or something like that. Those are also things that are not healthy. They're not accurate to objective reality. Now, maybe, let's suppose for a moment that the worldview that you hold is correct. Well, then it should be obvious, right? And so we want to make sure that our worldview is not only accurate to objective reality, it should also be open to questioning, and you should be able to withstand it. In other words, if someone comes up, right, to your worldview, to you, and you engage in a dialogue about your worldview, about how you view the world, you should be able to allow those people to question what you believe, and your worldview should also be able to withstand questioning. If your worldview is not able to withstand questioning, then I'm sorry, but your worldview is not accurate to objective reality. It just is not. If people cannot question, if you cannot question your worldview, then you've got a problem. And if your worldview is not able to stand up to questioning, you've got an even bigger problem, because your worldview is therefore false. Because if it wasn't false, then it would be able to withstand questioning. Now, am I saying that you should go out and immediately doubt everything you believe? No. But question it. Don't doubt it, but investigate it. Check it out. See if it's true or not. See if it fits to objective reality. Really, really important. Check things out. And question also, or not question, but consider also what things you're taught. Be open-minded. Don't immediately accept things to be true, no matter where it comes from, and don't immediately accept things to be false from things that you disagree with. Always investigate. I've taken this myself in my own religious viewpoints. I have investigated things. I personally have come out that my worldview stands up pretty well to questioning. But at the same time, I still respect other people. I still respect other people's viewpoints, and I'm always willing to investigate should I, be put into a situation. I've had discussions and dialogues with people of many different faiths, and some quite exotic, at least from my part of the world. And so it's really interesting, and it's interesting to learn about them. It's also interesting to see how my worldview stands up to questioning. So far for me, it has. Um, yeah. But we should always be open to allowing our worldview to be questioned. But our worldview should always be able to withstand questioning, right? But if there's a question you can't answer, don't immediately assume that your worldview is wrong either. Be thorough, okay? There are questions that are good. There are questions that are bad. There are questions that are going to be difficult. There are questions that are going to be easier to answer. That's just always the case. So be thorough. Be complete as much as you can be. And check things out. It's really important. On top of all that, with the accuracy to objective reality and all that, and also that we should be able to investigate our worldviews, and also be able to withstand, our worldview should be able to withstand that questioning. Top of that, you've also got the fact that our worldview should be helpful or beneficial to yourself and to other people. If your worldview is not helpful to you, then it's not going to be true, because truth is always helpful. That doesn't mean that it's always pleasant or that it's always easy, but it is always helpful. It always is helpful. It's what you need, even if you don't really like the fact that it's what you need, right? Even if it's something that's inconvenient, truth is not always convenient, but it's always helpful. It's always beneficial. So want to make sure that whatever the case may be, our worldview needs to not only be accurate, not only be able to withstand questioning, not only be open to being questioned, but it should also be helpful or beneficial to you and to others. If there's a problem about that, with your worldview, then you need to consider what your worldview is like. You really do. Because a worldview that seems to be true but isn't helpful is not actually true. Or at least your perspective on it is not. And it needs to be reevaluated. It needs to be practical. It needs to be beneficial. It needs to be something that is applicable to everyday life. And it should be, I guess I said open to questioning. But getting away from our worldview and our belief system right now, we're going to focus on our thought patterns. Our thought patterns, briefly, really should be the same as above. They should be accurate to objective reality. When you see something going down, when you see a situation, when an event occurs, whatever that event may be, our thoughts are our perceptions of those events. Sometimes they're accurate, sometimes they're not. We need to investigate things. So if we are thinking if we see an event and we think a thought, we should stop and say, okay, what is my perspective on this? Is that accurate? Is that likely? Is that true? Is that not true? Etc. Let me see. What's an example? Well, as I suppose I could use an example here of an example from my own life. Now, just to preface this, I happen to be autistic. I'm on the spectrum. Okay. And when I was younger, something that I did was I had an attachment to objects, to things like that. And I use this illustration a lot, actually, for this particular thing. I had an attachment in particular to, also, I have an attachment, I get attached to things that I really shouldn't necessarily get attached to. You have no reason to, right? And when I was little, we eventually, I think I was like 8 years old or so, we had to get a new fridge. And a fridge is, a fridge. It's an appliance. And we happened to have had that fridge for a long time, as long as I could remember. And I remember specifically the day that they came to give us a new fridge and take the old fridge away. And I remember I was so upset, right? I was upset that we had to give up the old fridge. I was upset that we were getting a new fridge. In fact, I was so upset that I went out and I said goodbye to the fridge. I went out and I was crying and I said goodbye to the old fridge. Now, of course, I was 8 years old. I was young, and being on the spectrum, that didn't make anything much better. But the idea was still there. The thought patterns were still there that this thing is something that's an important part of my life, and I should be responding this way to something that important. Well, my emotions were accurate to the situation as I perceived it. Something as humongous as, something very, very important leaving your life. Yeah, that you should have a very big emotional response. It's appropriate to go out and say goodbye. If there's somebody who's moving out, if there's somebody who's, if a friend is moving, or if a family member is going somewhere else, it's appropriate to have a big tearful goodbye. That's appropriate. But a fridge? No, not so much, right? And that's, now again, I was 8. Perspective's a little warped, but at the same time, it does illustrate the fact that our thought patterns really need to be accurate to objective reality. This was not something that I really needed to be that big about. Now, I'm grateful that, my parents didn't make too big of a deal out of it, about me making a big deal about that. And so now I can look back and laugh. You don't want to ridicule yourself or talk bad about yourself because you have certain thought patterns. We'll talk about that. But we do need to analyze them and say, hey, are they accurate? Is this thought helping me? Is this thought accurate to me? Is it going to help me understand the situation better, understand the other person better, understand myself better? Or is it not? If it's not, I need to rework that thought. It's really, really important that we're able to do that. And we should be able to question our thoughts. We should be able to say, hey, is that right? Is that true? Very important. But one of the biggest things that we do, and unfortunately a lot of people either don't know about it or dismiss it or just don't think about it, I would say more than anything else, we don't think about it. And that's self-talk. Our self-talk is so important. And really, just like the previous two, our self-talk should be accurate. And it should be helpful or beneficial. We really do need to make sure that our self-talk, as we're talking about, to ourselves, or as we're, thinking to ourselves, is this accurate? Is this something that is true? And secondly, is this helpful? Right? I work with young adults on the spectrum myself, teens and young adults on the spectrum, autistic, and being someone on the spectrum myself, I have a unique perspective on that. And one of the things that I do, or one of the big things, because I work with the so-called high-functioning teens, those people like me, who are able to get along well in society generally. We can kind of slip under the radar, don't really appear to be that, different. But at the same time, we do still have different thinking patterns and things like that. And one of the things that's a really big issue with my kids in particular is that they will beat themselves up over little things. Man, my handwriting wasn't that good on that assignment. Man, I should have done better. I should have done stuff like that, right? I should have written that neater, or, oh man, I got that answer wrong. Oh, I really should have gotten that answer right. Man, I'm so dumb. I'm so stupid. That's something that I will hear quite often. Are those helpful? Okay, sure. Maybe your handwriting was a little messy. Okay, mine is too, right? And maybe you got the question wrong. Those are both true, but are the thoughts helpful or useful to you? No, they're not. And that's really unfortunate that we're thinking that way. And so we need to kind of reroute those thinking patterns. Really, really important for us to do that. Instead of saying, oh, goodness, I'm so dumb. I look at what I did. I missed that question. I say, hey, maybe instead of saying that, hey, I missed a question. That's okay. I can, one question doesn't mean that I'm dumb, or missing one question or getting something wrong doesn't mean I'm dumb, or that I'm not smart, or that I am not able to do things, or that I even failed because there may be other questions on a test, or there may be other things like that, that, I actually do understand this very well, I just got the question wrong. So we need to make sure that our perspective, that our self-talk is accurate, but that it's also helpful to us. And one of the big ways that it can be helpful is that we should focus on the positive without ignoring, belittling, or dismissing any negatives. All right, we want to be able to acknowledge when we've made a mistake, when we've done something wrong, when we've, messed up, when we, whatever, right? We need to be able to acknowledge negative things that happen, whether they be things of our own choice or things outside of our control. We should acknowledge them, but we should also try and focus things on the positive, because, and this is really, really important. I have one student in particular who actually has a goal of doing things positively, and or rather phrasing things and saying things in a way that are positive, not to belittle or dismiss or ignore the negative, because this individual, they really have a strong, how can I say this? They love to say things that are really, really negative, like, oh man, I miss this teacher. I really wish this teacher was here. Or, oh man, I just don't know what to do about my school. Or, oh man, I don't know, I'm lost. I'm not doing my health habits like I want to do it. I'm not walking as much as I should. I really need to do that more. Okay, again, those are not necessarily bad thoughts or harmful, but they're not necessarily terribly helpful either. And so we really do need to make sure that we're paying attention to that and focusing on the positive, or framing things positively, while still acknowledging the negative, is really important. Seeing the clouds, but also seeing the silver lining. Instead of, oh man, I really wish that teacher was here. Hey, I really liked that teacher. I wish I could see her again, but or whoever it was, right? I wish I could see them again, but right now I haven't. And maybe I'll run into them sometime. I don't know. You never know who you'll run into. Something like that. And that's just an example. And I have plenty of examples from myself. I have to do that on a regular basis because I fall into that trap too. And so it's really important for us to focus on the positive while not ignoring, belittling, or dismissing the negative. On that note, there are people out there who have a tendency to do this, and this is something that I do want to address here. People who are always trying to find something negative in every situation. These are, there are examples listed here, and I do want to, kind of insert other ones as well. It could be things about people, it could be things about institutions, could be things about, you hear it all the time, oh man, so-and-so up at the top in management, they're not doing things right, I could do things so much better, or yada, 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 things like that. Or, oh man, the company just isn't doing things right, or the church isn't doing things right, or the government just isn't doing things right. You're trying to find something negative. And while it may not necessarily be wrong, at the same time, is it helpful to constantly frame things negatively, or to constantly find things wrong with something? That's not helpful, even if it is true. You do want to make sure that you're also being helpful. So if there's something negative, frame it positively. And try and come up with a solution if you can. If you're a part of a company where, hey, you know what, so-and-so up at the top isn't doing things necessarily what you see as the best way, well, hey, come up with a solution and start using it if you can. Maybe people will notice you. And, hey, you might get a promotion. You never know. If there's something going on in the government that you don't like, or if something going on, find a solution to that, right? If there's some system that's in place that you don't like, do something about it. Do something wisely about it. A lot of times, well, I'm not going to get into that, but, make sure it's wise and helpful for everybody, not just for one particular group, but you want to make sure that it's done well at the same time. And this is a big thing here. There's two big things, two examples that I have here. Seeing a government conspiracy everywhere. And it doesn't just have to be a government conspiracy. It can be any kind of conspiracy. But people who look for a conspiracy everywhere will typically be focused heavily on the negative, and that's not mental health. That's not mentally healthy. People who are offended by everything, who will look at people's statements and say, "Oh, I don't like that because I'm offended by that." Well, okay, there's offensive statements, right? Where there's statements that are legitimately offensive, and then there are things that are just not. And so we do want to make sure that we're also not trying to find negative things everywhere that we see. That's not a reflection on other people. That's not a reflection on any system. That's a reflection on ourselves. If we are thinking negative constantly, if we're seeing bad things everywhere, then that's on us, not on the world around us, because the world around us is not only full of bad things, there's also good things in the world. And so regardless of where you are, regardless of what your belief system is, we do need to make sure that the way that we talk to ourselves and the way that we look at the world around us, our thought patterns, they really do need to be positive, not getting rid of the negative or dismissing it, because those things do need to be talked about and looked at, but at the same time framing things in a positive light, finding solutions instead of searching for problems. Now, drawing to kind of an end here, healthy emotion. Really, there's two components of emotion, and they're both expressive, because emotion is ultimately an expressive thing. We've got internal expression and external expression. Internal expression is very much related to self-talk. It's something, it's what you feel on the inside and how you communicate that to yourself. Now, people might get a little confused by that. What do you mean communicate it to yourself? I'm feeling it, so I know what I'm feeling. That may be true, but you may feel it, yes. But you don't always understand what you're feeling. And as someone on the spectrum, I can absolutely testify that it is absolutely possible for you to feel something and not know what you're feeling. And so it's really, really important for you to recognize how you internally feel and what emotion that is. Link that up to a name. If you don't have that, then it's really important to do that. And sometimes what we think are emotions are just bodily desires. For example, oh, I'm hungry. Okay, I'm not like angry or bored. I'm hungry. Or oh, I'm feeling so tired. I'm just so slow, so down. Maybe I need a drink of water. Those things are possible. Now, again, that's not necessarily all mental health, okay? I want to make that very clear. That's not necessarily all emotional health, but we do want to recognize that those things can have a part to play in our minds. So let's make sure that we are also thinking about our bodies and making sure, because our physical health does have a part to play in our mental health as well. But our internal expression, this is really, really important. It should be appropriate to the objective situation, once again. And this has to do with, once again, where it comes from. Emotions always spring from our thoughts, our cognition. It may not necessarily be a conscious thought. You may not have, a thought fly into your head, right? You may not, think a sentence or think an image or whatever, or a feeling, or it may not necessarily be that way, but it's always rooted in our cognition, in our beliefs, in our thought processes, in our worldviews, all of that. That's where our emotions spring from. And so it's really, really important for us to take a look at that and say, hey, is this appropriate? Is this internal feeling, is that appropriate to what's really going on? Am I seeing things correctly? Once again, I return to the example of me in the fridge. I can take a look at this and say, hey, I'm, this fridge, yeah, it's been around in my life for a long time, but that doesn't mean that it's something that I should cry over. It's a fridge. It's an appliance. Okay. It's not appropriate for me to have this emotional reaction. I should have, maybe it's okay to be a little sad, because I'm 8. right? It's okay to be sad. It's okay to, it's okay for that. Age appropriateness is also part of that. But it is really important for us to recognize, when our emotional reactions internally as well as externally are not appropriate to the objective situation. Um, it's really important for us to recognize that. And so, we don't want to. Now, I do want to say, we should, again, never condemn ourselves for how we're feeling. It's a big thing. We shouldn't put ourselves down. We shouldn't talk bad about ourselves internally. We shouldn't have that negative self-talk. That's, no. Don't condemn yourself for how you're feeling, but at the same time, recognize that when you're feeling that something that isn't appropriate to the situation. Consider all possibilities. Don't just look at one perspective. Look at multiple perspectives and see if that way you can find the objective situation. And even if you can't find, even if it's not really possible for you to find the objective situation, for example, let's say somebody bumps into you while you're walking, and, they had a bunch of, they were, there was plenty of room, but they bumped into you. Well, there's lots of possibilities out there. Was it because they just didn't like you and they wanted to kind of make you uncomfortable, which is what, a lot of people might jump to? Or was it because they were lost in thought, they didn't see you? Was it because there was, some other thing going on? Maybe something was distracting them, or outside, and maybe there was, internal feelings going on that was distracting them there. You never know. And so there's lots of things that you could consider, which can be sometimes difficult when we're caught up in emotion, but consider all possibilities. Say, hey, what are all the possibilities? Not just the one that I think is true, but let's look at all the ones that are out there and say, hey, let's investigate this, at least just in our heads, if nothing else. And if it's possible, assume the best to be true. And this is something that I'm working on. It's very difficult to do. Now, that doesn't mean you don't expect the worst, right? The saying goes, at least that I've heard, assume the best, expect the worst, right? And be ready for anything. It's really, really important that we make sure that we assume the best out of people. That will get us a long way. Interpersonal skills-wise, that gets us a long way. Because, you want to make sure that people are, when you assume the best of other people, people will tend to assume the best of you. And they'll really like you. That's just, yeah. Now, are people always the best? No, definitely not. And that is also true. But when it comes to things that we cannot know, or that we don't have the opportunity to know, assume the best is true. Don't just think immediately of the worst, although that's the human tendency. Instead, try and assume the best about a person, about a situation, while preparing for the worst. Right? Assume the best, prepare for the worst, be ready for anything. That's what I say. And I can't remember if I got that from anybody else. I might have. But anyway. There's also external expression. This is how other people are going to see your emotions. This is how you're communicating your emotions to the outside world. Internal expression, it's how you communicate your emotions to yourself. External expression is how you communicate your emotions to the outside world. These are both very, very important things, and we do need to take a look at them. Very, very important. Again, external expression should be appropriate to the situation. The fridge, I shouldn't have been crying and bawling and whatever else I was doing, right? I shouldn't have done that. Because it wasn't appropriate to the situation. Was it appropriate for me to be sad? Sure, I was 8. But, I'm saying, I'm bawling and crying over a fridge. It's not that big a deal. So, it was to me, but I was also very immature and whatever else, right? So it's really important that we check things and analyze them and say, hey, is this appropriate or is it not? Right? Is this appropriate to the situation, to the circumstances that I'm in, or is it not appropriate? Bear in mind, too, cultural norms will vary. So you should look at your external expression and analyze it in the context of the norm or not analyze it, but you should make sure that the way that you're expressing things is appropriate for the culture that you're in. For example, here in the United States where I live, it's not really appropriate to express any emotions out in public other than just maybe happiness, right? But any negative emotions, yeah, no, you don't show those at all. Those are brushed under the rug. At least that's my experience. Now, and of course, there's also circumstances, things like that. You want to make sure that, how can I put this? There's also like, okay, there's public, there's in private, there's with friends, there's in a group. Is this appropriate not only to what's happened around me, but also the situation that I'm in, the environment that I'm in, the culture that I'm in. All of that has a part to play. And when I say culture, that could mean, the culture of the country. It could mean the culture of the local environment. The culture of a restaurant and the culture of a library are two very different things, right? The culture of walking out in the middle of the open road, or walking on the sidewalk, is very different than walking on a dirt road. You want to make sure that there's different cultures, there's different places that are different things that are appropriate to different places, and so we want to make sure that as much as possible, our external expressions should be appropriate to not only the culture of the country that you're in or the region that you're in, but it should also be appropriate to the environment that you're in. Once again, having to do with, restaurant versus, arena versus library versus, walking on the sidewalk. So you want to make sure that it's appropriate for those things too. Now, there are plenty of ways to express yourself. Some are purely verbal. You can express things with your words. You can express things with your body language and tone of voice and all that. You can express that way, or you can have an artistic vehicle as well for these things, for these expressions. And so, and this is important too. Not a lot of people will do this, and it's really unfortunate. We will have a tendency to, we especially in the West, we kind of split things, right? We have a tendency to, with our kids, right? We'll say, "Oh, you're creative. You can do this. You can do whatever you want." But as soon as you get up to a certain age, oh no, you can't be creative anymore. There's something that's squashed. The artistic flair, the artistic tendencies, those things are put down. Every kid's a musician. Every kid's an artist. Every kid's a painter. Every kid's a drawer. Every kid's doing that. All of them do. Even the ones that don't necessarily like it, they'll do it from time to time. Every kid is artistic in some respect. What happens to that? Most kids love singing. Most kids love, a lot of kids love dancing. I didn't, but a lot of kids did. And so, there's always, every kid has at least some form of artistic expression that they really like. At least some. And, where does that go in the West? Where is that, why do we not do that for our adults? You talk to adults who are drawing a bunch as kids. Well, I can't draw. And who told you that? It's really, really important for us to recognize that these things are healthy. You can a perfect example is the fact that we've had music for as long as we've been. Humans have had music and visual art since the beginning. You can go to caves and find paintings and carvings and things like that from way back when, and they're still artistic and considered to be artistic to this day. Of course, there's archaeological finds of instruments. I actually happen to have an ancient instrument. Well, I say ancient, pre-medieval but post-Roman instrument. At least it's based on that. And there's plenty of things that you can find that you can do, right? And so it's really important for us to make sure, if that's something that's so integral, right, to our human nature, that it's been around since as long as we've been, right? Well, we should be able to do that even as adults. Visual arts, music, language arts, performing arts, and yes, I do mean language arts. No, I don't mean studying grammar. When I say language arts, I mean the arts related to language. As a bard, right, this is something very important to me. Poetry, stories, and other lingual arts. These are things that are just as important as visual arts and music and performing arts, as dancing and acting and all those things. Those are all things that are important, and language arts are just as important. Writing a book should not just be communicating a story. You shouldn't just be communicating, you should be telling the story, right? I come from a family of storytellers, and yeah, if you were to look in the room I'm in, we got bookshelves. Bookshelves. And if you were to come to my house, bookshelves after bookshelves after bookshelves are just everywhere. And so, be able to tell those stories, be able to engage in that. If that's something that you like, if you aren't artistic, if you can't paint, if you can't draw, if you can't play music, if you can't act, or you can't do any of those things, try language arts, try poetry, try writing stories. Those are things that you can do too. And don't just write a story. Don't just communicate a story. Tell the story. Make it something that draws people in, and that the language is just as important as the words, as the actual story communicated. The words should be every bit as important as the actual story that the words are communicating. Anyway, that's beside the point. Now, are there other factors to our mental health? And we're closing out here soon. Yes, physical health can have a major impact. In fact, our physical health plays a huge role in our mental health. Lifestyle factors in particular can have a very, very powerful impact on our mental health. What we eat, how we sleep, how much water we drink, the exercise we get, all those have a very, very major impact on our mental health. Once again, as I said in the beginning, depression and anxiety, two of the biggest mental health problems that we have in the world today. Both of those are lifestyle issues. Both of those are lifestyle diseases in nature. You don't believe me? Check out the Nedley 10-hit hypothesis. It's really, really awesome. Fantastic stuff. Nedley, depressionthewayout.com. It's just depressionthewayout.com. No affiliation with me, but absolutely excellent resources there. You can find that out. And of course, you can also find the book Depression, The Way Out, which is a very nice scientific study of all that. It's really, not study, but lots of research on that. Very, very excellent book. Lifestyle factors are a huge component of our mental health. Some non-lifestyle diseases can also play a role. So, in fact, a lot of pathogenic diseases do. The cold, the flu, COVID, some of these other ones as well. Those are all diseases that can have an impact on our mental health. That's just the way of the world. That's just the way things are. Because it's having an impact on our physical health, it's also going to have an impact on our mental health. That's just the way it is. And so we do need to recognize that and, deal with that. Sometimes it's not always our fault that we're feeling down. Check those things out. Diabetes can also have a part to play. That can sometimes be lifestyle related, sometimes not, depending on whether it's type 1 or type 2. So there's lots of things to consider in those. But it's not just our physical health, because remember, we're not just physical and mental beings. We are also relational beings. And relational beings, as relational beings with a relational health, is just so very important. And Hannah Marjorie, thank you for the follow. I'm really glad to see that. So relational health, howdy there. It's good to see you. I don't have notifications up. I don't know how to work that just yet, so sorry about that. But I did want to call that out and say that there. So relational health is just so important, and it's almost never talked about. It's pretty much, other than mental health, it's the other huge epidemic that we have in our world today. In fact, in my personal opinion, currently our relational health is way worse than our mental health. Way worse. Yeah, it's yeah, mental health is really, really, really awesome, really, really important. And when it comes to our relational health, it's huge. I mean, look at the world today. You know, look at the world today, and I'll be doing a presentation on relational health. Look at the world today and tell me our relationships aren't messed up, and that our relational skills and relational health aren't messed up. We really need help with this. But our relational health can absolutely have an impact on our mental health. Healthy relationships are critical for our mental health. And when I say healthy relationships, here are some examples of what things are not good parts of, or good aspects of good relationships. Inappropriate boundaries, boundaries that are too strong or not strong enough. Those are huge. Those can have a really big impact on your mental health. A lack of social contact. A lot of people were seeing this now. Sometimes, if you're introverted, maybe too much social contact. There are so many relational factors that can play into our mental health. And again, inappropriate boundaries. That's huge. If you're letting people walk all over you, or if you're not letting people get close to you, both of those are really big things. Lack of social contact. This includes social touch. If you're not getting social touch, I'm sorry to say, but you're not relationally healthy, and that's going to have an impact on your mental health. If you want to know more about that sort of a thing, check out skin hunger. It's a real thing. We need human touch. In fact, one of the earliest scientific experiments ever recorded was done in the 13th century, the 1200s, by an emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, where he took these infants, right, and he wanted to see what language they would speak. And so he separated them from their mothers and had them just attended by nurses who would feed them and wouldn't talk to them, wouldn't interact with them at all, wouldn't touch them other than just to feed them. And all of the babies, all the infants died because they had no human contact. That's where we learned that as infants, we need human contact. And if infants need human contact and they can die as a result of it, even though we as adults have stronger systems, how much more do we need that human contact because we don't feel the need as strongly as an infant might. It's just so important. So let's summarize here, because it is getting late. Mental health is a real whole person issue. It's so important to recognize that mental health is real and that it involves the whole person, not just the mind, but also the body and us as a relational entity. We should monitor and correct our thoughts, beliefs, and worldviews, and our ways of expressing our emotions both internally and externally. We should monitor and correct those things, because those things, that habit of monitoring and correcting those things is absolutely a health habit for our mind. We do want to obviously get help and things like that. If you struggle with anxiety, depression, and anything like that, if you're struggling with mental health issues, then absolutely go see a mental health professional. It's so important. But also get yourself physically checked out. Go to a doctor as well. And make sure that you're well connected to people. We don't really have relational health specialists. We really should. But again, it's kind of ignored. So, but if you're experiencing any mental health issues, anything like that, then please talk to a professional mental health if I can stop stumbling over my words. Please go talk to a mental health professional. Please. It's so important. You would go see a doctor if you're having a cold, something like that. You would go see your doctor. Same thing. If you're struggling with mental health, go see somebody who can do something about it. It's really important. But again, it's a whole person issue too. So absolutely, don't just check out your mind. Check out our physical health and our relational health. These really should be taken into consideration when we're thinking about mental health. It's just so important. And that is all. So I'm going to open things up for questions and comments, etc. at this time. If there is anyone who has any questions or comments, now would be the time to do so. While we're waiting for people to be typing in chat, please consider giving this page a like and a follow. If you are on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, which I am also on YouTube, once again, I'm the King's Bard. You can find me on Facebook and on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, then you can go ahead and hit that like button for the video, but also hit a subscribe to the channel. I am going to be working on some other stuff as well. I've got other videos that I want to work on, and I've got plenty of other health resources as well as resources on other topics too, such as Bible study and some other things like that. It's really important. And also history. I love history. I'm a bard. That's what we do. So if you like history, something like that, then please do check that out. It's really, really, really awesome. I really like doing that. We've also got some music as well, which we've got music sessions and things like that. And check out my other streams. I stream on Saturdays at and all the times are Pacific Standard Time at 10 o'clock a.m. on Saturdays. I do my history stream. Sacred history. Right now we're covering the history of natural medicine. Really awesome. At 11:15 we do a Bible study stream, which we're focusing on a very, very important topic, the sanctuary. Awesome subject. So please do join us for that if you want to. And we have at our what am I thinking here? We have also at 12:30 or so. We have our bardic sessions, which is where we do music, sacred music, and sometimes poetry, sometimes original pieces as well. I do guitar and sometimes bring on other instruments as well. I've brought on a bodhrán and my lyre as well. So, yeah, those are all things that are that I stream, and of course Monday nights at 7 o'clock. Natural living, natural remedies. That's what we do here on Monday nights at 7. So please do check that out. And again, I got a lot of stuff archived on my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel as well. So please do check that out. I am also on Twitch. So as I think everyone who's watching here will know that as well, because I believe there are I think most people are watching on Twitch here. So. Don't know. But, and if you really like this stuff, get it out there. Share it. Share this with people. Get it out there. This stuff is really important, especially mental health. We really do need it. All right, I'm not seeing any questions at this time. So I think we're going to go ahead and end it here. Yes, so we're going to go ahead and close out. But if you have any questions at any point, if you ever want to talk to me about anything, I'm an herbalist as well as the bard and everything else. So please do, if you want to contact me, please do. Obviously, herbalism isn't defined in the United States, so I can't diagnose or anything like that. But I can give herbal advice and lifestyle advice. Just make sure that you discuss things with your physician before doing that. So. And before implementing anything that I might say may help. So, but if you want to ever talk about anything like that, if you ever have questions about herbs or herbalism or Bible or anything, or history or anything, or if you think maybe there's something you'd like me to talk about, then please do contact me. I'd really, really, really like that. So anyway, that being said, we're going to go ahead and close out. And yeah, so I always close out with a word of prayer, so we're going to do that. So let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your grace, for your mercy, for your love, for your kindness, and for everything that you do. Just ask that you would please be with us now as we go our separate ways. Please keep us until we should meet again. And Lord, let these things sink in. I know that you care about not just our salvation, but also our health, physical health, mental health, and our relational health. So please do be with us. Thank you so much again for everything, Lord, and keep us until we should meet again. In Jesus' name we pray and ask all these things. Amen. Alrighty, once again, thank you everyone for being here. Really appreciate it. I will see you guys 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Saturday, where we're continuing our history of medicine, and more specifically herbal medicine, natural medicine. And we are looking at Nicholas Culpeper, perhaps the greatest compiler of herbs in the more modern era. So that being said, I hope to see you then.